Not content with your content? You've come to the right place. The DisContent Show with Joe Kuzma. Every brand starts with a story. Here's how you can grow your business by sharing it. Now, with today's topic, the host of the DisContent Show, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DisContent Show. My name is Joe Kuzma, and I'm here with more tips and tricks and a topic, really, that's near and dear to my heart when it comes to content marketing. I'm talking about burnout. And right now, you know what? I'm feeling it myself, and it becomes something that's it becomes difficult because you know what happens? You feel like you're uninspired sometimes, you're tired, you're out of ideas. In fact, I even thought about just bumping the show an extra day to see if I could get some more sleep. I'm actually beat up from physical activity. There's all kinds of things that weigh down on you. Maybe your diet, maybe other stressors in your life. You're just busy, and you feel like no matter how much you put out there, maybe things aren't paying off. Maybe, this is like something that's in addition to just operating your own business or side hustle, so it's extra work, and that starts to get on you because you're experiencing a little bit of guilt, a little bit of isolation, like you're spending time away from something and it's costing you from spending time on other things. It's draining your energy, or you feel like you've become a slave. And these are things I've spoken about before, and it has to deal with consistency. It also has to deal with setting expectations and using something to actually have like a plan, like maybe a calendar or some other piece of software. So these are some ideas that I have to try and get out of, the whole burnout thing. Because if you are feeling that way, you don't know what you want with ideas. You feel like you have absolutely no inspiration. All you got to think about is what you've done the last few days. Go through your inbox, see what you've responded to in emails. Oftentimes, if this is something that's, related to a core business of some sort, something like a service, a product, something you're doing, like I said, it's a hobby, it's a side hustle, whatever it is, chances are you've spoken about it within the last several days and you just don't remember. And sometimes, I'm very guilty of this. I should be using like a note program, like, it's on your iPhone if you have an Android, whatever kind of smartphone you have, if it's in your pocket, or just, I used to, believe it or not, this is really dating me here, but I used to carry in the console in my car, and this is probably when I first started driving, believe it or not, it was a notepad, because I'd go on these like long drives. And sometimes, even if you're listening to music, you kind of drown out. You're on a windy country road or something, or even on a highway, and you're just seeing nothing but concrete, and your mind starts to drift a little bit into thought, your subconscious, right? And then you start thinking, you get ideas, and then they disappear. You can't remember them like hours later. So it always helped to write down. Of course, don't do that while you're driving, physically, but if you're that forgetful, like at least pull over. I'm not advocating that, I used to have a friend that, honest to God, he was eating with chopsticks and driving with the steering wheel of his car using his knee. So don't do anything like that. I'm not advocating that, obviously. But as you see, I'm already out of the funk. I'm having fun. And you got to remember why you started doing this to begin with. And if you feel like all of these different things are bogging you down, what you need to do is just kind of set a plan. Even this show itself, I moved it to every other week because some of the content kind of stretched thin, and then my own personal client workload, I wanted to at least be consistent, and I'm still consistent in that the middle of the week, at least twice a week, that you're getting not twice a week, but twice a month, you're getting something new, a new piece of content that's coming out from me. And like I said, I'm no worse guilty of doing this type of stuff or suffering burnout. And what you can also have happen too is that you have like a major surge, right? You have a surge of creativity, or you're going on vacation next week, so you have to do more than one thing at a time. Maybe you're writing 2 blogs that week instead, and then maybe you're ahead of the game, and you know what that does? That helps get you away from everything. Then you no longer feel like you're a slave to the content. You're no longer experiencing this guilt that you're spending all this time away because you found some quiet time, you found some inspiration, and you're able to knock it out. Now, the worst part is when you come back from that and you're trying to remember where you're at. So it helps to be organized. There's several software programs. I mean, you could just use like a Google Calendar. I use some other programs such as Trello. I use some task list programs too, like a reminders on my iPhone. So there's a number of things that you can do. I do recommend one thing though. Try and just use one, because then if you put all these things in 3 different places, and then that becomes overwhelming. At least you have it in one spot, look at it. Oh, that's right. I was ahead of the game. I only need to do one of these now. I could come back and do another one in 2 weeks. And then you could even usually set on most of these a reminder. You get an email or alert on your phone or something on the date or a few days before it's actually due. And it gives you some time and you can plan. And if you have a number of topics, you get on a roll, and you could at least, you don't even have to do it just then. You can at least write down that you had this idea and you can put it there. But of course, the most important thing is that you have a realistic expectation. If you can do it once a week, twice a week, in the case of the DisContent Show, I'm here, on the podcast at least twice a month. Realistic expectations, because I've got other duties where, I'm producing other podcasts, several, in a week. Sometimes it's just me producing and not just recording, by the way, too. So, this is work that I actually do for other clients. And I have to realize that, when I go to add my own at the end of the day, if you're in the same boat and you're trying to run a business or a hobby and you're building out a platform and you're trying to get that content marketing ball rolling, you got to have that sweat equity into it, and you got to remember why you're doing it. And then it kind of helps, because then you're kind of starting to get out of the funk. You're starting to move. And, this is exactly how I feel while I'm recording this show. I feel like, who's going to miss it? You know what I mean? Well, there's people out there who actually do pay attention to what I have to say, believe it or not, even to my surprise, as funny as that may sound. And that may sound just as funny when you ask yourself that same question, but that's the reason why you're doing these things. That's the reason why you're writing blogs or posting to social media. You're sending emails. Maybe you're recording your own podcast yourself. And it takes time too. So you can't look for immediate reward. This is something that takes some patience and time to get moving, and it helps to be consistent and continue to put, I like quality over quantity, but it helps to have a little bit of quantity too, because if you're not doing enough of it, then people tune out as well. And that was always like, a great fear here as well, doing this DisContent Show, is like, if I move this and I cut out a week, I'm sorry, I feel like, the guilt factor. Once again, it's like, is it going to cost me this and cost me that? But then if I do it, do I like tick off my family because I need to take like an hour to do this instead of, going to play ball with the kid or something like that? So you have to balance everything. It's always a balance, but make sure there's a little slice of the pie there. You know what the realistic expectations are for yourself. And when you make a plan, you're already there. Now, there is the possibility that you may need help outside of yourself. If you're doing this yourself, if you're hired to do content management, then I don't know what I could tell you. Maybe you have just a little too much on your plate. Maybe you could charge some more and then do a little less work, but just a not a higher volume, but lower volume at a higher cost to help make up for that. That's always an ideal situation if you can do that as well. But if you have to, you could always hire someone for help. Sometimes it's not that expensive, believe it or not. You look around some of the job boards, you just need somebody to help edit something that's written or anything like that. But there's also times too where, you overextend yourself and you can't necessarily just give in. So you also got to know, like, you got to know when to say no. That's the best way to put it, I guess, because I was doing the same thing here with this show, and not just to talk about myself, but, there's certain projects where I've abandoned projects. I've had little side hustles, and I had like one blog that I did, and I just knew I've had several where I knew it was time to cut ties. It was time consuming, and it was just not going anywhere. And I've, moved on, and I've done others, and I, juggle a lot of different things at the same time. But I also have that realistic expectation of, for example, I'll put this out there. I mean, I know I mentioned about being, a sports writer and podcaster in that aspect. That's another thing that I do aside from all the other hats I wear. But I also, I do a little video game thing, and it's like something I just do for fun that I'm not even trying to really monetize or make any money off of, outside of maybe a few ads here or there that's on that website. But in order to keep that going, I like playing old video games. So what I've done was I realized I'm posting these things like myself personally on social media. I said, hey, you know what? This should be a website. So I put it on a website. It's like my own little blog. I review some old video games. I have some images of it. It can be a little time consuming, but I have to realize an expectation of, hey, I could do this once a week. And in some cases, I do several at a time, and then the whole month is done. I mean, with the wonders of technology these days, I could schedule some of these posts. I could do it at the first of the month, and I could have it done for the entire month, 4 or 5 week month, depending on if you pick like every Tuesday or every Wednesday or something of that nature. And then it's done, and then you just come back to it. Now, the only problem is maybe the next month you're suffering a little bit of burnout. You can't necessarily do it all at once, and you're like, oh my God, how am I going to do this again? How am I going to go and I need to do like, there's 5 Wednesdays this month, and there was only 4 last month, and you start to panic. Don't panic. Just do the one and knock it out of the way, and you know what? Come back next week. When you come back next week, maybe you're more fresh and you can knock a few out at the same time, or maybe you just go week to week. And it's going to change up, and you have to be flexible with these things. I always think of this as like, this is dating myself too, but I say a chalkboard or a whiteboard. You can wipe this thing clean, and you could write it. You could start all over. You could start with your plans. You have to be flexible. You have to adjust where necessary. Otherwise, you're going to drive yourself crazy, and it's going to burn you out even worse. So just, be aware of that. You have to be aware of what your priorities are too. Obviously, is this like the 5th most important thing in the world to you? Maybe this is a side deal for you. Family's always important, right? Your employment, your job, that's always important. But you have to, step back and just have your priorities. And if this is still important to you, even though I play video games, you know what I mean? Now, I have to play video games in order to put them on that blog, but that's like the 8th most important thing that I'm doing. So I'm not necessarily going to put playing a video game and posting onto this video game thing that's on the side that's just a hobby over the other things that I'm trying to build, like my business podcast. You know what I mean? So sorry, I didn't play a video game instead of doing the DisContent show, because it was more important to do the DisContent show and build my brand. So you have to have priorities as well. Another thing you need to do too is, well, I just mentioned that. You got to have priorities. Also means you got to have a life outside of just doing this. Or if this is all you end up doing and you're doing it, 24/7. I found this out with the sports thing, and believe it or not, it's pretty routine, and it's something I'm on almost daily. But again, you could schedule things in advance. You could create some time, like the weekends and stuff. And of course, I have to create time. If I'm talking sports, I have to be able to watch the sports too. But you have to have a life outside of just doing that as well. The same thing with like the video games or anything like that. Same thing with this DisContent show. You have to have an escape from all of these things, or you will be overwhelmed. Your head will be underwater. You don't want to compare yourself to somebody else also, because somebody else may have far more infinite resources, time, money. Maybe it's a corporate owned type thing. Don't compare yourself to those. You know what I mean? I would never try and compare what I'm doing on a video game review thing to a full-fledged magazine. I'm one guy, you know what I mean? And I try and have some fun, but you get some affirmation though when you do something and it's good, and you start getting comments and you get likes and you get people that are part of your audience. You start to build community, and then it becomes fun and it becomes encouraging. And when people leave those positive notes for you, it's very helpful. Another thing that this is the drop dead one for me, but it's one that's often suggested, is to just take a break. And you could do that. You could let people know, like, if you just can't get it done in advance and you can't get ahead of the game, hey, you know what? DisContent show will be back in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. I'm not taking a break right now, but this is just for example. If you must do it, do it. I mean, there's no harm in doing that, but stick to your words. Don't take a break for 6 months. It's not going to be good. Or even worse, a totally unannounced break and you just disappear, because then it's like, well, this guy is completely out of business. He has flown the coop. So you have to know, I guess there's a few things here to just kind of wrap up, I mean, just for once, you got to realize being patient with some of this helps. Being able to be consistent is also a key. You got to balance everything with your real life, with your other priorities. And you also have to make sure that you have some breaks and some rest. So what really helps with this, as I say, put it on the calendar. If you're the one that just keeps moving appointments for the calendar, then it might be time to consider doing something else. But if you move it a day, like I was considering, maybe no harm, no foul. If you move it and you keep kicking the can down the road, then it may never get done too. So make sure you at least, you stick to your guns there. If you put it on there, then it's going to get done. But do it on your own accord. Do it by your own terms, or else you're going to go insane. So I hope this was somewhat helpful. I know it was helpful for me because I had to vent. I had to get this out because I'm definitely burned out. The fall season is definitely it's the busiest time of the year for me. I'm just running around like a chicken with my head cut off. And I'm like, do I really need to do this DisContent show? Maybe I could just wait 2 months and come back to it. And then you know what? Maybe you don't. So just know yourself and respect yourself, have some boundaries, and stick to a schedule. Be consistent with it. Balance is key to defeating, what's that word? Burnout. That's right. I already forgot about it. See how easy it is? Anyways, my name is Joe, and thank you guys for listening. You know what I mean? Because you know what? That helps me with the burnout too. So as always, I encourage listeners, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, of course. Leave a review wherever you are. But if you're running around out there, it could be a little bit chaotic, as my one friend would say. So I encourage all the listeners out there to be safe, be good, and I'll catch you later.
Hi folks, this is Joe Kuzma. No, don't worry, you're not hearing things twice. I'm just here to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for listening to today's show and being a follower and subscriber of the DisContent Podcast. And I want to remind you that if you're interested in more information about all the various things it is that I do, whether it be about this show, content marketing, or you want to ask a question, you may visit me at joekuzma.com. That's JOEKUZMA.com. Or you can follow me as well on Facebook. Make sure you get the page and not the personal profile. Sorry, it's only for friends and family. Also on Twitter at Joe_Kuzma, LinkedIn or Instagram. Also, don't forget, if you haven't already, subscribe, whether that be on iTunes, YouTube, or your favorite podcast provider, so you don't miss out on any of the great episodes that we have. Once again, thank you again for your support, and I look forward, as always, to speaking and interacting with each of you again soon.